Could it be that your obsession with finding your purpose is the exact reason you don't have one? If you've ever felt completely and utterly stuck on this one life's biggest question, you're in the right place because we're about to do a deep dive into the neuroscience of purpose. And I'm going to show you why that common advice to go find your purpose might be the very thing that's holding you back. Hi, my name is Adewale Ademiwa. I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist who also builds AI software. I have been using my 28 years of helping clients to build AI tools that actually understand therapy so my clients can get support even when they are not sitting in the therapy room with me. My biggest dream is to use technology to put expert mental health support in everyone's pocket. So here's the roadmap. First, we're going to talk about the purpose trap and why it keeps so many of us stuck. Then we'll shift our thinking to become a builder, that archaeologist. And after that, we'll look at your brain's own warning system, learn its bottom-up blueprint for purpose, and then we'll redefine the entire goal as stability over perfection. Okay, let's dive right in with the purpose trap. This is that crazy, frustrating paradox that the more desperately you search for that answer, the farther away it seems to get. So let's unpack why that actually happens. You can think of it like this. Imagine you're stuck in quicksand. Your first instinct will be to struggle, to flail around, to fight your way out. But what happens when you do that? You sink faster. This is the exact same thing with purpose. That desperate, frantic search for an answer actually works against you on a deep neurological level. And that idea brings us to the single most important shift in this whole podcast. We have to stop thinking about finding our purpose and start thinking about building it. The old way casts you as an archaeologist, digging in the dirt for some pre-existing artifacts. But what the neuroscience is telling us is totally different. Where you are the architect designing and constructing something new using the raw materials of your own life. You're not fighting to integrate experiences, but you are building it. This means that your brain, the CEO, executive part of your brain, is actively building a framework, constantly pulling in data from everything, your past experiences, your emotional reactions, what feels rewarding, what doesn't. It uses all of that to construct something that gives you a sense of direction. So if we are all meant to be these amazing builders, what's actually going on in our brain when we feel so painfully and hopelessly stuck? It turns out that that feeling isn't some kind of personal failure. It's a very specific neural event. That uncomfortable nagging feeling of, I don't know what I'm doing, is basically your brain check engine light. There's a part of your brain called the anterior cingulate cortex, the ACC, and its job is to be an error detection system. When it senses a conflict between your reality, I don't have a purpose, and its prediction, I should have a purpose, it flashes a painful signal. The signal itself isn't harmful. It just means your brain is doing its job correctly. Now, that brings us to a critical question. If the brain is just sending normal signals, why does desperately trying to fix the problem make everything feel so much worse? Well, here's the problem. The moment you get desperate, your brain's threat system kicks into overdrive. It's like trying to do the thoughtful, complex work of an architect whilst the foreman is screaming in your ear, build faster, you're not good enough, hurry up. That sense of panic and urgency literally shuts down the very part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, that you need to do the actual building. And this is how we get trapped in that vicious downward spiral. Your desperation activates a threat state in your brain, and that threat state puts a brake on your prefrontal cortex, the architect, and this grinds the whole construction process to a halt, which of course only makes you more anxious and more desperate. And the whole horrible cycle just starts all over again. You got neurologically, literally stuck. So if desperation is a trap, how in the world do we get out? The solution, believe it or not, lies in understanding your brain's natural bottom-up process for building purpose. You just have to learn to work with it. So here's the sequence. And I need you to hear this. You cannot skip this step. Has to start with action. Just doing this, anything, just to gather behavioral data. Then your brain starts to recognize patterns from that experience. And from those patterns, it starts to build little stories about your identity. Like, oh, I'm the kind of person who enjoys doing this. Only then, after all that, can it start to construct purpose based on that identity. And from all that raw material, your purpose starts to crystallize. And this is so, so important. You cannot sit in a quiet room and think your way to a purpose. It's impossible. Your prefrontal cortex needs raw materials to work with, and that material is real-world behavior data from your experiences. Trying to build a purpose without actually doing anything is like asking an architect to design a building with no concrete, no steel, with no glass, with nothing. It just doesn't work. This all leads us to our final and maybe the most important insight of all. We need to completely redefine what the goal of having purpose even is. It's not about finding the one perfect capital P purpose. So this comes down to a concept called allostatic load. That's just a fancy term for active wear and tear on your brain and body from chronic stress. That energy is making your system constantly on, creating a huge allostatic load. And so for your brain, the number one function of purpose is to turn that light off, that energy off, and give you a stable framework to operate from. So the emotional wellness doesn't come from finding a purpose, but it comes from having a stable enough framework so that your brain can finally turn off that stress signal. The actual content of your purpose is way less important than the stability of the framework. That's the real price. So let's just put this all together. Remember these key things. You are a purpose builder, an architect, not a searcher. That painful feeling of being lost is a functional brain signal, not a personal flaw. Desperation is the enemy that neurologically prevents construction. So the only way forward is from bottom up. Action leads to patterns, which leads to stories. And maybe most importantly, a stable framework is always more important than a perfect one. So I want to leave you with this old question. What is my purpose? It's huge. It's overwhelming. It's the kind of question that can easily kick off that desperation. So what if, for today, just for today, you asked a different question, a smaller, more curious question? What if you just asked yourself, what pattern can I notice today? Because that is your first step in your brain's natural construction process.